Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on how to install Oracle Linux 7. I'm going to install OL7 on a virtual machine named host03 in Oracle VM Server for x86. I'll begin by creating the virtual machine and logging into it using VNC Viewer and then perform the installation. As you can see, I'm logged in as the root user and I'm running Oracle VM Server Release 2.2.1. I'll run the command xm create vm.cfg to create the virtual machine. I'm going to use VNC Viewer to connect to this virtual machine, but first I need to know the port number. So I'll run the command xmlist -l, the name of the virtual machine, pipe that to grep and search for the string location, and this returns my VNC port number, which is 5903. So then I can type in VNC Viewer and run that in the background, and when prompted for the connection details, I'll type in localhost and then the port number, which is 5903. And the Oracle Linux 7 installation menu appears as shown. You'll see that there are three options. First is to install Oracle Linux 7.0. The second is to test the media and install Oracle Linux 7.0, and this is the default option, and it will automatically be selected within 60 seconds of accessing this window, and you can see it's counting down. And the last option here is troubleshooting. So you can select any of these options just by using your arrow keys, up and down arrow keys. You'll also see there that there's a message that says press tab for full configuration options on menu items. So if I press the tab, you'll see all of my configuration options. You can then edit any of these options using your arrow keys to move your cursor. You can add options. Press enter will execute the installation using these options you specified, or I can press the escape key, which I'll do now, to return back to the menu. I'm going to go down here and select troubleshooting and hit enter, and you'll see that there is another menu that is presented. So here you have an option to install Oracle Linux 7.0 in basic graphics mode, and it gives you a short description here as to what each of these options do. So you can see here it says try this option, basic graphics mode, if you're having trouble installing Oracle Linux 7. So for example, if the default option causes a distorted or a blank screen, then you can try this basic graphics mode, because chances are the driver for your video card is not being loaded. So you can use this option to get around that problem. You can do the rescue Oracle Linux system. If your system will not boot, this lets you access files and edit config files to try to get it booting again. So if you're unable to boot an installed system, rescue allows you to repair partitions, edit configuration files, and fix a variety of boot problems. Run a memory test. This allows you to select a memory test utility to verify RAM on your system. As it says here on the screen, if your system is having issues, a problem with your system's memory may be the cause. Use this utility to see if the memory is working correctly. And then there's also an option to boot from a local drive. So select this option to boot the system from an installed hard drive. And then finally the option to return the main menu. The tab key also works here in terms of bringing up all the configuration options. So I press tab and again I hit enter. It will initiate the command using these options, or if I can hit escape to return to the menu. So I'm going to use my arrow keys and go down here and select return to main menu, and then I'm going to initiate the install. I'm not going to test the media, so I'll highlight install Oracle Linux 7, press enter. The first window to appear after choosing to install Oracle Linux 7 is this language selection window. So in the left hand box you can select the language to use for the installation. The language becomes the default language for the operating system, and the language is also used to target the time zone configuration, which is done later in the installation process. In the right hand box you can select the locale. I'm going to scroll down and select continue, and you can see you can also choose to quit the installation. The installation summary window appears next, and you can see there's a set of options under localization, a set of options under software, a set of options under system. You can select any option in any order. Only those options that have a warning icon must be configured. So in this example, the system installation destination has a warning icon, and it says there are no disks selected. And if you scroll down, it actually says please complete items marked with icon before continuing. After all of the installation options are performed, then your begin installation button down here in the lower right will become active. So I'll start by selecting date and time under localization, and you can select the appropriate time zone by country and by city closest to the location of your system. To select the time zone, you can either click the map or you can select from the drop-down region and the city menus. You can also select ETC at the bottom of the region menu. I'll do that, and then under city you can select your time zone adjusted to GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. I'm going to go back here and select Americas as my region, and then I can select the city, or I can click on the map. And I'm in Denver, Colorado, so I'm going to point toward where approximately Denver is and click, and you'll see that it set those for me. You can also manually adjust the date and the time down here at the bottom. The time can either be a 24-hour clock or use AM or PM. Up at the top right here you can enable network time, or NTP, network time protocol. However, the network needs to be configured first. If I try to slide this over to on, it doesn't work. So the network needs to be configured prior to. But however, I'll continue as if I could set network time protocol. So you would flip the switch here to on, and then there's this configuration icon here that brings up this next window and allows you to select your NTP servers. You can add NTP servers, and I'm just going to hit cancel here, and then all my date and my time zones configured, so I'll click done. Next, I'm going to select keyboard from the localization options. The language that you selected in the welcome screen, the first screen that came up after you initiated the installation, is listed as the keyboard layout here in the left pane. You can add support for additional keyboards just by clicking the plus sign down here. So if I click the plus sign, it'll bring up a list of additional keyboard layouts. Scroll down here and select one and hit add, and you can see that it added here to my list. You can select one of these and then move it up, and notice up here it says US. Whatever's listed first here will be listed up here, but if I move up the German keyboard layout, then it's changed up here. If I move it back down, this is changed back to US. But you can also click here and select between the different layouts that you have. You can type some text in here to test the layout. You can click the options button to display the layout switching options, and it sees here which combinations would you prefer for switching between keyboard layouts, so you can configure that. I'll just hit cancel, and then you can delete keyboard layouts. So I'm going to delete the German. I'll highlight the German one and hit the minus sign, and it's gone. I'm back to US. So I'll hit done, and then I'm going to select the language support. From this window you can install support for additional locales and language dialects. So you select the language in the left hand pane, and then click on the checkbox for one or more locales in the right hand pane. And I'm not going to make any changes here. I'll just click done. Next, I'll select the options underneath the software group. I'll start with installation source, and from this screen you can specify locally available media, installation media, and you can also specify a network location. This auto detected installation media is selected by default in this example, and this option is available if the installation program detects a local device such as a DVD or USB drive that contains the full installation image. Another option that is not shown is ISO file, and the ISO file option is available if the installation program detects a local hard drive with a mountable file system. With the ISO file option available, you can click a button that says choose an ISO, and then you can browse to the installation's ISO files location and select the ISO image. The ISO file option also has a verify button to check the media, just like the auto detect has a verify button to check the media. You can specify a network location as the installation source by clicking on the network, and I'll go ahead and do that. You can select a network protocol from the drop down list. There's either HTTP or HTTPS, and FTP and NFS. For HTTP, I'll select HTTP, and for HTTPS you enter the URL of the installation image. You can optionally configure a proxy for HTTP and HTTPS. For NFS and for FTP, you would enter the domain name or the IP address of the server, and then the path to the directory that contains the installation image. And as you can see here, you can also specify mount options for NFS. Down here at the bottom, you can specify additional repositories which might contain more installation environments and software add-ons. Just click the plus sign button to specify additional repository, and then you can provide configuration information for that. I'm going to go ahead and delete this newly added repository by clicking the minus sign, and then I'm also going to change my installation source back to auto detected installation media. I'll click done, and it'll return to the installation summary screen. Next, I'm going to select the software selection option, and from this screen you can specify which software packages you want to install. So there's a base environment pane on the left, and then there's add-ons for selected environment. So the base environment are predefined sets of software packages for a specific purpose. So the minimum install is basic functionality, basic web server, server for serving static and dynamic internet content, virtualization host, server with GUI. Each one of these has a specific set of add-ons. I'm going to go ahead and select the server with GUI, and this is the only base environment that includes a graphical desktop. By default it's the GNOME 3 desktop, and you can see that the add-ons changed as well. So there's for each base environment there's a specific set of add-ons, and if I want to install some of these add-ons, I just check the box. For example, I'll install I'm going to select FTP server, file and storage server, scroll on down here, and maybe select network file system client. And if you scroll on down further, for some base environments you'll see this horizontal line. So everything above the horizontal line are add-ons that are specific to whatever base environment that you selected, and everything below the horizontal line are add-ons that are available for all environments. So when I'm done here, I click done, and I'm returned back to the installation summary screen. It'll check for dependencies and so forth and make sure everything's okay, and then you're ready to move on to the next configuration option. I'll select the installation destination option under System. From this screen you can specify where you want to install the software, and also you can configure the storage from here. Local standard disk section displays the storage devices that are directly connected to your computer. In this case I have 3 disks, a 12 gig disk and 2 5 gig disk. Each disk is marked with its device name, XVDA, XVDB. These are virtual disks. We're running Oracle VM server for x86. It gives the size and the available space on the disk, so all space is available on these disks. You click the disk that you want to install Oracle Linux on. So I'm going to select this 12 gig disk, and you'll notice there's a checkbox that appears next to selected disk. Under specialized in network disk, you have an option to add a disk, and under here it will display multipath devices, SAN devices, firmware RAID, so forth. You can search. This window has 4 tabs. If you select the search by drop down, allows you to filter storage devices either by their worldwide ID, WWID, or also by the port or the target or the LUN number at which they are accessed. Check the multipath devices. This displays storage devices that are accessible through more than one path, such as multiple SCSI controllers or fiber channel ports on the same system. You can also filter let me click here. You can click multipath devices. You can filter by the vendor, interconnect, or the WWID. If I select any of these, like for example vendor, then I'm prompted for the specific vendor information. If I click other SAN devices, this displays storage devices available on a storage area network, a SAN, and you can also filter these by vendor or interconnect or ID. And again, if you select one of these filter by fields, you're prompted for additional information. The firmware RAID tab displays storage devices attached to a firmware RAID controller, and you can see there's none at this time. At the bottom of this window, there are buttons that you can add an iSCSI target. You can also add FCOE, fiber channel over Ethernet, SAN. So if I click the add SCSI target, then I'm prompted, as you can see here, it says to use iSCSI disk you must provide the address of your iSCSI target and iSCSI initiator name you've configured for your host. So you enter all this information. You can actually start the discovery here once you've entered your information. I'm going to hit click cancel. For adding a fiber channel over Ethernet SAN, again you're prompted for specific information. So you just select the network interface that's connected to your fiber channel switch, and then hit add FCO disk. But I'm just going to hit cancel. I'm going to go hit done here, and I'm back to the this main installation destination screen. There's other storage options down at the bottom. Partitioning, you can automatically configure partitioning, and this creates logical volume partitions, but I'm going to go ahead and configure manually. I'm going to select I will configure partition. This allows me to create manual partitions. You can also encrypt data. So I'm going to select I will configure partitions, hit done, And then it brings up the manual partition screen. So it says you haven't created any mount points for your installation yet. You can create them automatically. Now this will create the automatic partitions that if you selected from the previous screen. So I'm going to select this just to let you see what the automatic partitions are. And so what it does, it creates a 500 megabyte boot partition and with an XFS file system. And then the root partition is a logical volume. It's called OL-root, and it belongs to the OL volume group, and it also has an XFS file system on it. And then your swap partition is again a logical volume that's part of the OL group. I'm going to delete all those. If I hit this button here, it says reload storage configuration. Actually, I don't want to hit that one. I'm going to go down here and hit reset all, so it'll take me back to where I was. So I'm going to create my partitions and mount points manually. It says here new mount points will use the following partitioning screen, and it defaults to logical volume LVM. But I'm going to go ahead and choose standard partitions. You also see you can create BTRFS file systems and also do LVM thin provisioning. But I'm going to, for this example, create standard partitions. And then you hit the plus sign to create the partition. It's going to prompt you for a mount point. I'm going to first, from the drop-down list, select /boot, and for the desired capacity I'll give it 500 megabytes and then click add mount point. And you can see it starts to build your partition table. So the default file system is XFS for Oracle Linux 7. I'm going to change that to ext4, and then my update settings button becomes hot, and so I'll go ahead and click it and save my changes. And available space and total space, available space is updated as you add new partitions. So I'll go ahead and click the plus sign and add another partition and a mount point. And this one this will be my root partition, and I'm going to make it 6 gig. I'll hit add mount point. It updates my table, it updates my available space. Again, it's an XFS file system. I'm going to change that to ext4 and hit update settings. I'm going to add another partition, and I'm going to mount this on /home, and I'm going to make this 2 gig. Click add mount point. Again, it updates available space. It's an XFS file system. I want to change that to ext4, update settings. Last thing I want to do is add swap. So I'll click plus to add, and I will choose swap as my mount point. And you'll notice the available space is 3.7 gig, and I want to use all remaining space for swap. So I could type in 3.7 gig, or I could just type in something above that, in, for example, 4 gig, and then hit add mount point, and it'll take all remaining space. You'll see that it's set that to 3.78. There's a few 100 kbytes here available, but basically it took all remaining space. And then I'll hit done, and then it'll display a summary of changes, so you can see exactly what's going to happen here. It's going to create these partitions, the device names, the file system types, the mount point. I'm going to go ahead and accept my changes. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is network and host name. And it brings up this screen here, and as you can see, it'll present a list here of all network interface devices that it found. You cannot delete these. Notice the delete button is not available. You can add additional network interfaces of these types, either Bond or Team or VLAN, virtual LAN. You can give your host a name from this screen at the bottom here. So I'm going to go ahead and name this host03.example.com, and then you can enable networking for the available network interfaces. So you just highlight the one you want to work on. I'm going to work on ETH0. It's currently disconnected, so I'm going to toggle this, flip this switch to on, and then I'm going to go ahead and configure it. So it brings up this editing ETH0 window, and it has several tabs here. The Ethernet tab comes up first, and it gives you your MAC information, your MTU. Under General, there's a few check boxes here. I'm going to go ahead and select automatically connect to this network when it's available. Under 802.1x security, you can choose to enable security for this connection, and then choose whatever type of authentication method you want, and then provide username and password and so forth. I'm not going to enable that for this example. Under DCB, you can choose to enable data center bridging for this connection, and then configure it as necessary, and I'm not going to do that for this example. Under IPv4, this is where you set up your IP addresses and so forth. It defaults to DHCP, as you can see here, as a method, so it'll automatically obtain an IP address from a DHCP server. But for our example, I'm going to change this to manual, and then I'm going to go ahead and actually add the IP information. So for the address, I'm going to type in 192.0.2.103, 24-bit net mask. The gateway will be 2.1. You can also add DNS, domain name servers from this screen. I'll go ahead and add a couple, and these are specific to our environment here. If you want to add more than one, you just separate them with commas. The second one would be 10.216.106.3. You can also add a search domain. I'll go ahead and add example.com, and then click Save to save your changes. Alright, and that's it. I'll go ahead and hit done. And once everything is done, there are no more warning icons. Everything is configured. Then you can shoot the begin installation button becomes active, and so you can start the installation. And you can see it's creating file systems, partitioning your disk. It's giving you a status window here. It's starting the package installation process. And while all that's occurring, though, you have a couple options here. You can set the root password, and you can also create an initial user. And again, these have warning icons on them, so I'll go ahead and do that. So I'll click here, root password, and it prompts me for the root password. And I'm going to use a root password of just Oracle, O-R-A-C-L-E, and then confirm, O-R-A-C-L-E. And it gives you the strength of the password. This is a weak password. It says here at the bottom, the password you have provided is weak, shorter than 8 characters. You will have to press done twice to confirm it. So I'll click done once and then done again. Okay, and you can see here my progress is still continuing. It's installing some packages based upon what I chose, the base environment and all the add-ons in the software selection window. I'm going to go ahead and create an initial user. I'll just call this Oracle Student, and it builds a username based upon the full name, but I'm going to overwrite this with Oracle. You have the option to make this user an administrator. In other words, it'll add it to the wheel group. Require a password, yes or no. I am going to require a password, and I'll just use Oracle and confirm Oracle. And again, it's a weak password, so I have to hit done twice. Under the advanced button is you could go ahead and say I want to create a home directory for this user. I could specify a particular UID and GID. I could add this user to additional groups. I'm not going to do anything here in the advanced option. So I do need to hit done twice since it's a weak password. Once, twice, and the installation is continuing. And when this is done, it will prompt me to reboot my system when it's done installing everything. After a few minutes, you'll see the Oracle Linux is now successfully installed in your system. Go ahead and reboot. So I'm going to click the reboot button. And I'll lose my VNC session because of the reboot. So I'll run this command again and type in localhost 5903. And you can see it's sitting at the grub boot menu, and it's going to boot the UEK by default. This takes a few seconds. And because we chose to install the server with the GUI base environment, after the system reboots, an initial setup screen is displayed. You won't get this screen if you did not install the server with GUI. If you installed any other base environment, it'll just come up to a command prompt. You need to accept the license agreement here, so I'm going to go ahead and click this, and you can scroll down, so forth. At the bottom is a button, I accept the license agreement, and then you click done. And then you can finish the configuration or quit. I'm going to click finish configuration, and first boot launches next, prompting you for some final configuration items, starting with kdump. Kdump is a crash kernel dump mechanism, and I am going to disable, it's enabled by default, but I am going to disable kdump by unchecking this box. Click forward, and because I chose to change the kdump settings, the system will need to be rebooted. So I'm going to click yes here. The next part of first boot is to set up software updates, and this gives you an option to connect to the Unbreakable Linux Network, or ULN, for software updates. This will be covered in another video, registering systems with ULN and getting software updates from ULN. So I'm going to click no right now. I prefer to register at a later time. I'll hit forward. It's going to try to encourage you to connect to ULN, so you'll have a chance to go back, or I'm going to click no thanks, I'll connect later. The finished update setup. Your system is not set up for software updates. It tells you how you may access ULN registration tool. Again, this will be covered in another video. So I'm going to click forward. I do need to reboot my system because of the change to kdump, so I'll hit OK. Once again, I'll lose my VNC connection. So I will run that again. And my grub boot menu shows up here, and by default it's going to boot the Unbreakable Enterprise kernel, the UEK. And again, because we set up we installed the server with the GUI, it's going to bring up the GNOME 3 user login screen. And we created an initial user called Oracle Student, which is shown here on the screen. So click Oracle Student, provide the password, and you'll get to the GNOME desktop. This concludes the installation of Oracle Linux 7. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.